real quick. Thank you. So you can always add count. There actually are a couple other functions just like count that you can add to things. So just example. So we have 127 bakeries, and if I do this, I'll see a lot of them. So if I want to limit them just to see a few, also a dot limit. So 2, for example, and it only shows me 2. So you can, there's a couple of things like this you can always add after the query. But the other way you can extend this, well, I'll keep going. All right, so this one was a tricky question. It's about types. So what's the name of the restaurant with this ID? So I'll copy that. And so remember, it's called underscore ID. But with this one, you have to call an object ID. So object ID is, it looks like a constructor in JavaScript if you remember constructors. But it's a type. So we have to make sure to match the type of this. Because object ID, although it looks like a string, it's a special thing. It's its own type, a data type. It's not a string. So if I don't have the object ID there, I'm not going to get a match. As you can see, if I do this, I'll get nothing. And Jurgis pointed this out. It's annoying because if you make a mistake in the query, you'll just get nothing back a lot of times. So it seems like it worked or something, but there's actually a bug. So in this case, you need to have the object ID there. So the name of this is, okay, it's hard for me to find the name here because there's so much stuff. As Qua pointed out, you can do pretty, and that formats it nicely. And here I can see, indeed, it is Wild Asia. The other thing I could do is I could select certain fields. So actually, find takes 2 arguments. The first is the query, and the second is called the projection. And that's a complicated sounding word. All it is, it's the list of fields that you want to keep. So for example, I want to keep name. So I just pass name 1. So a truth value there is going to make it so I only get that field. ID is always included, but you can actually remove it if you do something like this. You can give a 0 value. So ID 0. So 0s make things go away, and 1s make things keep. So that's how you can see Wild Asia by adding name 1 as a second argument to find. So Wild Asia. Okay, so now how many restaurants receive a C grade? I made a mistake in this, sorry, I think, or one of these I made a mistake on. So I added a link to the relevant docs here. So you want to query an array. So there's a lot of different things we can do here, but what we want to do is, okay. So we want to query for document nested in an array. So we look back at our object. So if I scroll up, we have, like, this is one of our objects. We have the ID, the address, the grades. It's actually an array. So note the square bracket there. It's an array of different documents. Documents, objects, kind of the same thing. So each of these objects has an A inside. So here we can use like this dot notation, which is similar to what you'd see if you can remember ES6. So I want to find something with grades. Dot grade is a C. So by default, it just like tries to find one that matches that command. You'll note that there's like, you know, you can have multiple grades. So if a document got an A, like in this one, for example, here, let me just do it pretty. Like this one, for example, this, what's it called? The Punch Bowl. So the Punch Bowl, it's an American restaurant in the Bronx. It received an A, B, A, B, A, but it got a C. So this restaurant's gone down. Oh no, it got better. So in 2011, it was a C, but they've improved since then. So good for them. Wait, yeah, from 2011 to 2014. So because it has one C, it matches this query, where there's one thing that where grades.grade was equal to C. So what was my answer? 496 is the correct answer. And let's see if I actually did that on the quiz. Sorry, it's 496. I swapped two answers. The next one's actually 20. Okay. Wait, did I miss a question?
Only 4.
Oh, there's supposed to be 5. Oh, there's supposed to be 5 questions. I wanted you to find all the bakeries in the Bronx. That's what this was for. Okay, so I want to do an example of an AND query. So here's a bonus question. I wanted up on the quiz. Sorry, there's supposed to be 5 questions. Can you find how many bakeries are in the Bronx? So I know I can do bakeries by doing cuisine bakery. So this is all the bakeries. There's a whole bunch of them. Right, there's 127 bakeries. How do I find where they're in the Bronx? So there's 2 ways to do this. I can do this, and then I can do borough Bronx. Borough is like a kind of district or ward in America. So it's a district, the Bronx district of New York. So that's 20. So that combines those 2. And maybe the better way to do it is to do an AND. They're the same thing though. So that's, you should know the syntax. So AND takes an array, and then I put the 2 things in here. I always forget this object at the top. Okay, and then my internet just died while that was happening. That's okay. All right, so any questions about the quiz or for the bad answers? No questions. Everyone understands this perfectly. That's fantastic. I must be such a teacher. Why is the where query different than the doc? What do you mean array query different than the doc?
We can.
The one I was most like this one.
We can use a element match or something. It's an operator. But there are like a couple of ways to do the same thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do the same thing. Yeah, you could also do this, I guess. Actually, this thing, by the way, the documentation is pretty good because you can actually play with it here. You click on this thing, it gives you a live session. You can actually type it here. Oh, there's something in the surveys. I think I have to insert them. Oh, even the insert first. Hold on, sorry. So copy this and then paste here. And then now you can run these commands and you can see the output from them. And you can walk through these examples as well. So MongoDB has done a great job with their documentation. Some of the best in the business, if you ask me. Okay, so again, it takes more practice. That's why. So the first afternoon, I want to walk you through. That's my secret notes. So walk you through a basic walkthrough. So far we've been running on just reading from the database, and we're kind of reading from Quaz database in the cloud. But what we can also do is we can just run a local instance. So if I type Mongo with no arguments, it should actually just run on my local host. By default, it's actually running on localhost 20.07.17, I think, or what's the number? 27 and 17. So by default, if you have not changed any settings, your MongoD app, MongoD, Mongo daemon. Daemon's the name for a background process. Is running on that port, 27017. And here we can do all the same things that we were able to do before. Show DBs, show collections. I have a local thing called video. Sorry, use video, for example, show collections. So we have different DBs. For now, if you type one that doesn't exist, Mongo creates it for you. So let's make a new one called To-Dos app. So we switch to DB To-Dos app. And if I do show collections, I don't have anything because it's a brand new database. I need to create the first document in order to have a collection. So I'll insert a to-do. So I'll create a new collection here called To-Dos. It doesn't exist yet until I insert one. So I'll insert and insert one. So insert one takes an argument of just what the document looks like. And again, there's no like structure, like there's no forced structure yet. We'll get to that kind of later. So I can type whatever I want. But if I think about how I did my To-Dos app, I think I did something like, I'll leave ID out because now the database will handle ID. So let's do to-do, learn MongoDB is complete, false. Here, be careful to do false. Don't do this because that's a string for false, just like JavaScript. We want to make sure it's a Boolean value so we can kind of search for it easily later. So you get, it returns you the ID, the object. So now if I do to-dos, find, awesome, I have my first to-do in the database. It's exciting. Now you can imagine how you can make your to-do app way better than that crazy like JSON thing we did. We can query on it. We can find all the complete to-dos. We could all find all the, there's a lot of things we could do. We could also add a due date here. So originally I had instructions that had a date. Okay, well, what do I do? All right, so let me actually jump ahead for a second and do an update. So you can add documents, you can add data to an existing thing. Sorry, I forgot to, it should be db.todos, not d.blogs. Too many bugs today. db.todos update. So update takes two arguments. The first is the filter. The second is the new value. It's like the new kind of thing to update. So the filter is just the same as the find query. So that's important to know. By default, update will update like everything. So if you write the query that like, if you make a mistake in the query, update could update like all sorts of documents. So there's other versions of update, like update one, update many, and things like that that you should be careful about. So we'll do update one just to make sure we only ever update one thing. I'll just do by the to-do name because I know I have one. I could also use the ID here. Update one to DB, and here there's different update operators you want to use. So let me pull up the documentation on that. So here there's different ways to update data. There's like push. Let's see. There's depends on the object. So if it's just a document, there's like set is the most important one that you want. Oops, I need to click on that. Sorry, my computer is running a little bit slow. Go forward. So set, if there's an array, you'll use push. And then there's other things that you'll want to use. One cool thing, for example, is like ink. So the reason why this exists, because you might have two people trying to increase something. So imagine if you have a likes count. If I said, hey, set likes count to likes count plus 1. So if I have one like, okay, set likes count to 2. But if like 10 people are hitting the same thing at the same time, there's a chance that they overwrite each other. That's why we have the ink operation. Ink operation is guaranteed to increase it by 1. So you can't have multiple people jamming each other up. But set's the one that we probably want to use here. But note that there's a lot more. There's push and pull and pop for arrays. And you can do like slices and stuff as well too. But let's say we want to set. So it's the operator as the key and the value is the thing that we want to change. You'll get a lot of like curly brackets inside of each other in Mongo. So we'll set things complete to be true. Sorry, that's not what I want to do at all. Sorry. I'll change it back to false. I got distracted. What I wanted to do was add that date field. So I'll set a new field, and it can be a new name here. So I'll just say like due date. And I'll set that to date. And that's how you can do the current date. And you can see like the match count, modified count. So now if I do find, I have now a new field on there called due date. And it's set to, I just made due to now. So let's do, I'm already late. But yes, we can do all sorts of things here. Here's how you'd set it's complete to false or true. I mean, right now it's false. Sorry, let me switch to true. And you can see it said true. So there's reading and writing to a database in a nutshell. So go through those steps if you can. There's also insert many and update many and things. So we'll walk you through. So we just have you these quick milestones just so you have practice writing and updating to your local database. When you develop your applications for the rest of the week, you'll be running your database locally. And for a lot of reasons, that's the best thing you should do. When you're developing, you should be running locally on your machine. And later, you can run the cloud when you deploy. It's generally the way you do it just because it's a lot faster to run locally. And it removes one thing that can go wrong. Like, you know, the server could go down or something. You don't have that risk when you're running locally. And then we want you to work through the course. So again, just a quick on the course. It's here. You have to sign up for it, but it's free and everything. And it walks you through some really good steps. I think the real thing that I can't walk you through as well as this guy can is how to create an Atlas sandbox cluster. So this is how to creating a DB in the cloud. There's so many steps here. So I'm glad that they went through all of that. It's just a lot of configuration, how to do all these things. So I didn't want to copy all these screenshots, and they keep these up to date. So creating Atlas is probably the hardest part of this whole thing, and the rest should be pretty easy. Cool. Any questions about anything? No questions again. Great. Best class ever. One question. Oh, okay, good question. Thank you, Nian. The use of Atlas. So Atlas is a MongoDB server that you can like use. So actually, let me take that back. So Atlas is like a service provided by a MongoDB company. What you use it to do is have a database instance on the cloud. So similar to how Heroku, you can run everything locally, but once you push it to Heroku, it's on the cloud or on the internet, so anyone can access it. When I develop locally like this, it's running on localhost. So only my computer has access to this. But if I want it to be accessible by Heroku or by other people, I would need to push this into the cloud so it could actually run. And that's what Mongo Atlas lets you do. So they host your database. So what happens is that you have Heroku running, you have Atlas running, Heroku running, your Node.js apps running on Heroku, the database is run by MongoDB, and they talk to each other, just like cloud to cloud. And that's how many applications are actually built. No one ever hosts their own database. Well, you can. And I think as Kwa mentioned in chat, there's a couple other competitors like MLab and a few other things, but MongoDB Atlas just kind of ate everybody because they're the official one, so it's the best. So it's like Heroku, yeah. And I mean, that's a one thing, like, yeah. No, MLab is acquired MongoDB, okay. Maybe MLab and Atlas are kind of the same thing. Yeah, and this is why actually in the tutorial they force you to create an Atlas thing. This is like this is one of the many ways that MongoDB makes money. but they want to host your MongoDB instances for you. Yeah, so when you create DB locally, it stays on your PC until you specifically delete it. So it's persistent. It's just like a file on your computer. It's there forever until you get rid of it. That's the whole point. So the database is persistent and durable. Cool. Any last questions? Great. So no question. And just a last note is that, yeah, there's a whole bunch of things we can ask you to do at the very end if you get done with everything. So it'll be good practice. How did you come up with this list, Kwa? Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, what was it?
Can you explain this list of amazing 32 item list to all of your students? Why you put them through so much torture?
So just like when you work out, like you want to do the heavy lifting a lot, right? So that exercise your muscles, right? So at the same time, it's the same. You have to practice, and these are very like many of them as like practical to your future project, I would say. So for
Yeah,
now, it's just about reading the database, but in the future, you will have some other operations like create, delete, or like updating. But right now, you worry about reading.
yeah.
So
And reading is the most fundamental skill. Just like any language, you learn to read before you can write. But in an application, and a state-of-the-art application, 99% of the time, if not more, like 99.5% of the time, you're reading. So Facebook, you're just reading posts. People read a lot more than they write. So it's very important to get reading to be very efficient. And something too is like a lot of these things we did already, but kind of in JavaScript, right? So we had that a long time ago that helped you do filter or .map, use all these things to search for data. And talked about sorting algorithms last week. One, databases specialize in that kind of stuff. So anytime you can push that kind of calculation to a database, it's going to be 10, if not 100 times, if not 1,000 times faster. It's usually a lot faster doing the database. Databases are made to deal with big data sets, like lots of data at the same time, whereas your JavaScript code is not. As you saw, sorting 1,000 items in JavaScript can be really slow. It can take seconds. And database, yeah, I'd rather have. Leverage the database with potential. And there's more stuff you can learn, more some well stuff in MongoDB. And there are people whose job it is. So my last thing I want to talk about. You can actually there's a job called a DBA, a database administrator, or I mean it's not as common anymore, but you usually have, maybe it falls under DevOps, you usually have a person who is in charge of just like database stuff, oftentimes. So if you watch the video from the introduction to MongoDB video, the 5-minute video from the CEO, they talk about a lot of features that MongoDB has actually. And one of them, for example, is replication. So if DB, in real life, if you have Facebook level stuff, your computers break all the time, for example, like they physically break. So how do you have a database where you have spread copies across multiple database computers? So if one breaks, it can like recover from other ones, stuff like that. You need someone to manage all those things. Yeah, and MongoDB does have special algorithms to make sort and find way faster. The main algorithm that they'll use, well, there's two things. First is like, it looks like JSON, but it's actually like underneath the hood, it's all written in C, C++. That's why it's called BSON, binary something object notation. So it's very fast and efficient compared to plain text. But also there's a thing called indexes. So the main trick of database systems is they'll index things very smartly for you. So let's see an example. So it's like no one here knows a phone book, but it's like if on your contacts, right? So if you look at your phone in your contacts, you have like you have a few different ways that your call log is shown. For example, for me, like this is what I received today, like my calls today, yesterday, April 17th, April 16th, April 13th. So one way this data is indexed is by date of call. So I want to find all the calls on April 10th. Like my phone has extra data to make sure it does that. It doesn't scan every single thing and says like, oh, like April 10th is here, but there's no April 10th. So if I have 100 calls and like 10 of them are April 10th, it doesn't check all 100 and just come me the 10. It actually has built in like, hey, there's like a tree. It's like, here's all the calls from April, here's all the calls from March. Here's all the calls from the first half of April, second half of April, for example. That's the naive way. And so it's easier to find all the ones that fit a specific condition. Things like that. Indexes are a big thing about database is fast. And the other thing that Kwa is saying about how NoSQL is about scaling. So it's also good to scale because you can keep half of, it's a little bit easier to do what's called horizontal scaling. So before we talk about Excel, I can scale a little bit because I can have different sheets, right? All the brand information is here, all the produce information is here. But eventually, even those things get too big. So how many brands are there in the world, for example? There's like millions, right? But because they all have the same structure and they all need to be like, they all basically need to be together on one sheet. You can't take one sheet and split into two sheets very easily. But with a document, it's very easy. Just have the first half of the document on one page, or the first 100 documents on one server, the next 100 documents on the next server, and so on and so forth. So you can keep them all kind of separate. And so it's a little bit easier to scale in that sense. And that's what scaling, so the main thing there is like scaling. And in the video, he also talks about sharding. So these are all like different concepts, but sharding is also like, it's easier with NoSQL to keep, for example, all the Vietnamese Facebook accounts are on the Vietnam computer and all the American accounts are on the American computer. It's a bit easier to do things like that. So you don't have everything on one computer. You can break into smaller computers more easily. Cool. Sorry, thanks for listening to my long talk. Actually, like I first met MongoDB like more than 10 years ago. So I worked on a game, like an online game, and we were one of the first kind of people to use Mongo. It was Mongo 1.0. I don't know, they're on 4.2 now. I worked on Mongo 1.0, and it was the worst. It was really bad at the time, but now it's way better. Oh, yeah, the same sharding uses blockchain. So it's the same concept. So sharding is just a generic term. It means you keep different data apart from each other. So yeah, so on blockchains, you might have a shard that handles all like a regional thing, or potentially all the things related to one specific subchain, or like what's called sidechain. And you might have people only processing certain parts of the blockchain. So if blockchain is like a continuous line, you might have the first half on one shard, half on one shard. And in between, you just have, all you need is a hash code in between the two chains. So yeah, it's a similar concept to blockchain sharding. The best example of sharding I use is like if you've ever played an online game, there's like StarCraft or Warcraft or something. You have the North American server, you have the Europe server, you have the Asia server. That's sharding. It's the same game, but the data is on different servers. And the way they've implemented it is you can't play with people in Asia, you can't play with people in Europe. And that's just to keep the servers manageable in size. Cool, good luck. At the end of the day, actually, I'll make one more ask. So if you finish the certificate, can you upload the PDF or a screenshot of the PDF to the Discord? So as you guys are going, I'm a little pretty excited about it. And we are uploading upload a certificate. So I'll upload my first example. And that way, if I'm going to get one thing together, one all perfect. Sessions are all online and separate. So please do that. Cool. All right. See you guys afternoon. We'll be around as usual. Anything to add, Bidna, Goa? Yes. So in short, upload your certificate once you get it. Then everyone can see.
I think I had that certificate, but I just forgot the link. Oh, and they actually had the online course that you had to finish the homework and stuff, and there's also exams for each module. So at the end of the course, you get a certificate, a bigger one.
You don't have to do every single thing. Get all the like,
I can't hear you, Charles.
all the apps.
Can I hear
you? You don't have to do this. Oh, sorry, my computer craps out.
Right, let's end it.